Ladies and gentlemen, our third panel of the day, titled Bolstering Education in the AI Era, will be moderated by Dr. Ryan Carpenter, Senior Advisor at SCSP. Please join me in welcoming our speakers, Daryl Pines, President of the University of Maryland, Greg Hart, CEO of Coursera, and Lynn Parker, former Principal Deputy Director at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy.
Well, I feel like it's the film festival, and I'm going to talk about the latest Tron film. Well, thank you for sticking with us, and thank you for coming to what will be the best panel today. I'm going to say it already. And I think to one of the most important topics, and that is education. Because education is, all of you have been to school, all of you remember your favorite teacher, everybody remembers the thing they learned, and has a favorite subject in school. And it's undeniable that AI is now impacting education in a way that maybe we haven't seen, in some ways are predictable. But I want to start out to ask these incredible people to get to know where we're going. We got to know where we were. And so if you don't mind, each of us, this is for the question for everybody, talk to me about what you've seen AI in the past couple of years. How has it impacted education? I'll start to my right, Dr. Pines.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Carpenter, for having me as a panelist, my colleagues here. It's a privilege and honor to be with all of you. Let me first start off by asking the question, how many of you have used Google today? Okay, you can put your hands down. How many of you have used ChatGPT today? About the same. All right, pretty impressive, right? Two technologies started in two different time frames. One about 25 plus years ago and one just 3 years ago, at least as far as the most of the public is known about it. The last time this happened in higher education, where we had a transformative technology, my colleague to the right will speak to this, which was massive open online courses, commonly referred to as MOOCs, as you may remember. The whole higher education community was in a state of shock, thanks to my friend to my right, and his organization called Coursera. It made them nervous because they didn't really know what was going to happen. Would residential institutions not go forward? Would only online courses be the only way to go? But of course, with time, people calmed down, and we found out that MOOCs were just one part of our enterprise. And it still is. At University of Maryland, it's about 10% of our courses are online for our students. So artificial intelligence is probably even more transformative than MOOCs. Something that started literally just 3 years ago, November of 2022, if you all remember when ChatGPT 3.0 first came out, it was a shock to the system, especially a shock to higher education. Because like any new thing, the first thing is to resist. Don't use it. You're not allowed to use it. Students can't use it. And I remember this in my own experience as an undergraduate. I actually started off as an undergraduate engineering major at UC Berkeley, and in my freshman year, I was using a slide rule. But by year 2, I was using the HP 35C calculator. If those of you who are old as me know what I'm talking about. And the faculty were panicked about the HP 35C because they were like, oh, you can't use that in the classroom. You can't use that for homework. That's how this technology is now to higher education. But now we realize, what is it going to do for us? So I'd say it's going to do something in 5 areas in higher education. Number one, of course, affect how we do education, curriculum, and learning. Number 2, how we do responsible research, leveraging AI. Number 3, how we translate AI-developed IP to innovation and entrepreneurship. Number 4, how we affect governance and policy, both within our institutions, privacy, validating that data is real, synthetic versus authentic. So policy and governance. And then finally, how we're going to connect to our communities in the form of equity and level the playing field for the digital divide. That's what's happening in higher education. So I want to give you a couple more examples. At University of Maryland, we have just created the first ever human-centric AI course, which is really done by a partnership between our computer science faculty and our faculty in philosophy. That class is going to roll out in the fall, and it's been focused mostly on those students who are in the humanities and social science, rather different than most other technical areas. We also have developed a requirement across the university in which every student has to have some touch point in curriculum or experiential learning opportunities in artificial intelligence, because every field is affected by it. And then finally, as towards this issue of equity and community, we created a online free certificate program done by our Smith School of Business to offer small businesses and those who wanted to radically reinvent themselves access to AI in a certificate program that's completely free online. Today we have 32,000 registrants, and it's growing. So it's going to change in those 5 areas that I mentioned, and I'll stop there.
Greg, I'd love you to add on to that.
Sure. So if you think about the whole history of human progress, a large driver of human progress has been democratizing access to knowledge. You can go back to the printing press, then to the first universities, taking knowledge and learning, out of just religious institutions into a broader population set. The internet was another large enabler of access to information on a much, much broader basis than historically you'd easily find. In the Western world, people are fortunate to be able to go to libraries and get access to books. The internet made it much, much easier. Gen AI is the next step in that. And I think the thing that is going to happen and we're seeing happen is the pace at which that access to knowledge and the impact of that access drives change across society is only going to accelerate. Even if you think about when ChatGPT launched in November of 2022 and today, it's gone from, very quickly it got to 100,000 weekly users and then, 100 million, and now it's 700, 800 million weekly users of ChatGPT. And the pace at which not just ChatGPT, but all of the different LLMs are progressing is really astonishing. And what that enables and can enable over time, I think we all are not going to be able to imagine, what happens in the future. And so I think some of the key things that are critical as we wrestle with, okay, how do we help this technology help our country, help humanity, and do that in a responsible way, are how do you apply access to this knowledge? How do you gain the right skills through access to this knowledge to really impact your career and impact society in a positive way? And Daryl mentioned, MOOCs, which obviously Coursera grew out of Andrew and Daphne's, first course back at Stanford back in 2012. And now we've come a long way since then, but I still think we're really at the very beginning stages of how that transforms society. And one of the big trends that we are seeing is an increasing focus on not just knowledge, but skills and gaining skills that can be applied. And I think that is going to be the next frontier of how AI helps transform education and takes education from being something that, often did teach skills to being even more closely tied to economic outcomes.
So to build on these great comments, in terms of democratization, I think AI has not only democratized access to knowledge, but it's also democratized creativity. I think particularly in the writing area at this moment, but also in images and other areas. So many people, if you think about writing, you have writer's block, and you have concepts that you want to communicate, but you can't get them to, you can't express them in ways that really help others to understand them as well. So you can work with a tool like ChatGPT and help get your good ideas out on paper in a way that is creatively expressed that other people can resonate with. I think that's something that we shouldn't minimize. It really does open up the door for many people who have amazing ideas but can't quite put them into words or put them into images, can help them as well. I think, the challenge that you have when ChatGPT first came out, I was at the University of Tennessee leading an AI Tennessee initiative to help people all across the state to be able to leverage AI. And one of the very first community groups that we were hearing from were the educators about, particularly in the English area or literature or creative writing area, recognizing that on the one hand, you're democratizing creativity for writing. On the other hand, you might be losing the ability to learn those skills. And I think most people still, including me, still believe that those skills are critically important, independent of having access to a tool that allows you to express those ideas. So I think that's something that we're still grappling with. I think it changes how you do education. You have to come up with new ways of teaching, just like you no longer ask students in class to do long arithmetic if they've got calculators available. We have to figure out new ways of examining students so that they can show that they're learning areas without just being a crutch on tools. One other area of education that I'll point out that I think has changed in the recognition that AI is now touching every job, every aspect of society, is the importance of getting started young. And so this is the importance now, I think, of K through 12 education as well. They're probably now growing up to be native AI people, but I think there is a role for formal training in K through 12. And so, of course, I came from the White House OSTP recently, and we put together the Presidential AI Challenge aimed at K through 12 students, project-oriented kind of approach, so that they could learn AI through the application of the tool to a variety of community problems that the children want to explore. So I think there are a lot of these kinds of efforts from K through 12 to higher education and the teaching that are all being impacted by AI in the last couple of years.
I'm not sure you did that on purpose, but that actually leads me to my next question is, how has learning changed in the classroom, particularly Dr. Pines, from the teacher's perspective, how you're teaching, but also from the student engagement perspective? How has AI impacted and how have teachers and students adapted to AI?
Well, you know, Len was mentioning one example is in the area of English and history, and also in the fine arts. So it used to be, probably when we were students, you would write papers. It would be a homework assignment. Maybe it's 5 papers for a given semester, and they would be graded at, say, 20% of your grade. Because AI and generative AI is now available through ChatGPT, we have to let the students use it just like I use the HP 35C as a tool to help you with learning in the area of composition and writing. And so now what professors are doing, at least at University of Maryland, they're letting them use the tool as a way to start the manuscript, but then they're having them finish the actual finalized text maybe in the classroom environment. That's number one. Number two, they're quizzing them more in the actual classroom environment as opposed to counting homework that was 20% or 80% that was homework. Now the homework is only 15%. And the in-classroom knowledge and distribution of that knowledge that you have is now 80%. So faculty have adapted, just like faculty of 30 years ago adapted with calculators, and we see this new way of using this tool, and it's still evolving. At the University of Maryland, we created a generative AI RFP across our campus, and we got over 100 proposals from our faculty to leverage generative AI and how they want to use it in all kinds of courses throughout the entire curriculum. And so faculty are excited. Some of them are very nervous of taking away their creativity, as Lynn was referring to. And these are the ones that we have to help the most leverage the new tool as we go forward.
Greg, I was curious, from your perspective from Coursera, almost a similar question, but how has AI enhanced online learning for students?
So, you know, AI is interesting because it's both a topic du jour and something that everybody's interested in learning about. And so we have more than 1,000 courses on AI on Coursera, you know, both from universities and from industry partners, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Deep Learning. And it's also a tool that we can use to enhance that learning experience. And so the original Coursera experience in the MOOC that Andrew and Daphne taught was you watched a video, right? And then you might have an assessment. But it was a relatively, quote, traditional learning experience just done online. Now with AI, it can be a much more interactive experience. And so Coursera, very quickly after ChatGPT launched in 2022, launched a number of features to improve the experience, both for learners and for the professors and instructors who are creating the courses. So Coursera Coach is an AI-powered tutor that rides alongside the student in every single course that they're taking. They can, you know, in the same way that they would interact with ChatGPT, interact with Coach. And Coach is trained on the material for that specific course. And so you can use it as a student to refresh your memory on something that you might have heard, you know, the other day when you were going through the course, but you're not quite as fresh on it as you'd like to be. You can use it to effectively quiz yourself as you prep for an assessment that might be happening within the course. And then on the instructor side, we have something called Course Builder that is an AI-driven course creation facility that makes it much easier for a professor to create content, to create a course out of material they might already have, to either adapt something that they have in their physical course that they're teaching in their university, leverages common cartridge formats. And so it makes it much, much easier to create a course and a syllabus and assessments that meet their pedagogical goals for that particular topic. The other thing, just to build a little bit on the concept of the tool and is it cheating, is it allowed or not? Obviously, AI makes it much, much easier to gain surface level knowledge and regurgitate that without potentially actually having deeper understanding and true mastery of that skill set that you're trying to gain through that class. And so we leverage AI to help with that. So we have Integrity Check, which is an AI-driven feature that's based on the simple premise of show your work. And it ensures that the student is going through that in a way where they're demonstrating their knowledge. And then for true high-stakes assessments, we have proctoring, where the AI ensures that you're actually looking at the screen, you're not looking at other devices, you can't have other browser tabs open, et cetera. So we're trying to bring AI as a tool to help improve the learning experience and really ensure that the students who go through that gain true mastery of the skills that they're taking the class, ostensibly to learn. So I think it's this interesting sort of double-edged sword where it's transforming the learning experience, but also providing a means to improve it at the same time.
Can I just add, just before you go to Lynn, I just want to add on what Greg said, because I want to take you all back to 2020, where for about a year and a half, we were doing virtual learning, all institutions, high school, K through 12, higher education. And then you would have tutors who were human beings, but they were tutoring people through Zoom or some virtual learning. Now we've come so far in 5 years that we offer virtual assistants similar to Greg and Coursera that is really helping the student as a personal assistant in, say, a calculus course or a chemistry course. That didn't exist just 5 years ago, but it exists today, that a student can actually have this for all of their courses. And as Greg mentioned, it can help them go through those courses and learn better. This is where the enhanced learning is coming from artificial intelligence.
And you can see all of that on SCSP's free course on Coursera on AGI National Security. Sign up today. So, Lynn, you come from a very unique perspective here from OSCP, and you saw the nation as a whole. Could you talk about some of the obstacles facing higher ed, K-12 higher education, and some of the ways that OSCP is trying to solve those questions, particularly because of the recent challenge and other things? There's an education task force. I'd love for you to talk about how you saw it from that perch at OSCP.
Sure. So when you think about policy for education, for any topic, of course, at the federal level, you can have provide opportunities, you can provide perhaps some funding opportunities and resources and so forth. But at the end of the day, it comes back to the state and local levels, for the most part, of the individual university to determine how they're going to be, say, leveraging AI. So one of the things that at the federal level that the OSTP aimed to do through the President's executive order on AI education that was signed back in April was to create opportunities for partnerships with the private sector, recognizing that much of the expertise is in the private sector for enabling students to have to learn about AI. And so that executive order did create a task force that one of the aspects of that task force was to help facilitate these partnerships with the private sector, including both tech companies as well as nonprofits that have educational experience. And one of the real goals there is to help with the access and the opportunity across the board. You know, you have places like people that go to Coursera or University of Maryland or University of Tennessee. They have certain opportunities there. But if you look across the across the United States, not all schools have that same kind of leadership or vision or insight or knowledge in order to help prepare students for the AI-enabled future. And so the partnerships with the private sector can provide things like resources that can be made generally available for things like curricula. If you think about K through 12, one of the challenges that we face is that you tell teachers, okay, students need to know about AI, so please teach them some AI. And they say, we'd be happy to. What's AI? and so the challenge is teaching the teachers about AI so they feel comfortable and empowered and knowledgeable enough to actually teach AI, particularly at K through 12 levels. And so coming back to those partnerships, if there are curricula or training opportunities or other kinds of educational opportunities that can be made available across the country, then that can help provide that kind of training, that kind of foundation that we need in order to help the entire country to be able to be more prepared for the AI-enabled future. So those are the kinds of policies you can think of at the federal level, where the federal level is not going to tell an individual school, you must do this, but providing these kinds of resources in a manner that's very visible and people can go to them and can learn from each other, create community, create networks to be able to leverage these kinds of opportunities. So I think that's one thing. Another kind of policy challenge, if you talk to parents, still sticking with the K through 12 level, a lot of the parents are very nervous around getting little Johnny or little Susie access to AI for very good reasons. There are certainly bad things that can happen. Even with common innocent kinds of uses, there's a question around how is my little Johnny or Susie's data going to be used? Is there data privacy policies that are needed? So I think there are a lot of these kinds of data privacy and child safety questions that do need to be answered at a policy level. Legislation like the Take It Down Act, for instance, is an example of policies that Congress pushed and signed and the administration signed on to that help protect young people. So I think those are important policy areas as well.
I couldn't agree more. And the one word I heard you use was accessibility. And we were talking in the hall about accessibility. I'd love, this is for everybody, how do we improve accessibility for folks? Because it feels like, one, there's so much information coming to people, it's hard to determine how, like for parents, who's concerned parents, what tools do I use for the kids? And what's a useful tool for them? And each of you have a unique perspective. So I'd love for you to just kind of give a little bit on how we think about accessibility, how we improve accessibility when there's so many things that are out there. How do we help parents here?
Well, I mean, I think first, there's a lot of fear that's out there for a tool like AI, especially if you're not from a STEM background. And you're just, shocked by how fast everything has moved. So I think there's first an education that has to be done. And again, first, let me start in higher education. So we had to establish our own policies and governance related to this tool. Number one, privacy, the same issues that Lynn was referring to. What data is going to be considered to be private, right? And anonymized and doesn't get released. Who's going to be allowed to execute algorithms on that data? Who's going to be allowed to publish the results, especially if it has sensitive information in it? So we actually, based on everything that's going on, had to establish our own policies at our institution. And then we didn't even let faculty just arbitrarily go out and purchase a new software and put it on our servers, because we had to understand what are the ramifications of those software being used at the university. So once you establish those governance policies, then you can clearly educate the community on what's allowable and what's not allowable. And then it's just educating your community on how AI can be a positive tool, but it has challenges. So for example, let's just have an open conversation about what is authentic and what is synthetic, right? This is one of the biggest challenges that faces social media. What is real, what is not real? Faces journalism. What is truth, what is not truth? This is the biggest challenge we have with the digitization of everything that we're doing. And AI plays into it as a new way to take my voice over, and is it really President Pines or not? Or is it Dr. Carpenter? Or is it someone else? And this is something that we haven't still solved as a policy, as a regulation in the United States. So the technology is so far ahead, we've got issues of explaining regulation, establishing that regulation, establishing what's authentic and what's synthetic. So a lot of work has to be done, both just in education, but beyond education as well. But I don't want to be a pessimist, right? This is an incredible tool that we all get to use, and we simply need to do a better job of educating and making it accessible to all population groups. So democratizing AI for all is something that we really, really care about at University of Maryland. We've created an institute called the Artificial Intelligence Interdisciplinary Institute, and one of our primary focus is to help the disabled community use AI as a tool to enhance their quality of life. And we focus on the deaf community, the blind community, and several other disabled communities. And we've created already chatbots and tools for them to use, which is really exciting. So we don't want to leave anyone out from this incredible expansion of technology.
Maybe to build a little bit on that, Coursera is obviously very different than a public higher education institution, even though we offer a lot of courses from those universities. The thing that we are very much focused on is orienting everything we do at Coursera around skills. And so if you think about the way that Coursera started, it was really around bringing access to university education to the world. And now what we're trying to do is take that to the next level by focusing on the skills that you can gain at Coursera to apply to your career. And so our North Star is, helping learners master the right skills to grow their careers. A big part of that starts with understanding some of the potential pitfalls of using any of those skills and those tools. AI is a tool, obviously, that enables a lot of different things. We're still at the early stages of that evolution. And if you think about some of the things we're reading just this week, with ChatGPT's launch of Sora, and the unbelievable verisimilitude of the video that it generates is pretty astonishing, and it's going to make it much, much harder to discern what was really a video of that person versus what is an AI-generated video built off of a photograph of that person. And I think that has a lot of ramifications and implications for journalism, as Daryl mentioned, and for how we all perceive history, if you will, and what that means. So those are big, weighty questions that are going to require a lot of input from, obviously, regulatory bodies, the government, and policymakers, and then they will filter down and be reflected in what gets taught at universities and on Coursera. We're trying to make sure that we're representing that as faithfully as possible, even though we recognize it isn't necessarily our job to dictate what those rules might be. So,
and I could add, I think education plays a role here too. We were chatting just behind the scenes here before we came up here about how young people now almost automatically they look at something, they say, "Oh, that's AI," or it's not just young people; it's all of us. "Oh, that's AI," and so we have educated ourselves to know that a lot of the material that's out there is quite likely could be fake. And so I think education plays an important role of just raising awareness of what to look for. And then the fine line, as we were talking about, is having a healthy skepticism without being cynical about it all. So it is an opportunity. We can use it in good ways, but we do need to have that sort of skepticism and that knowing eye of making sure that we as a people are being smart about these technologies. I don't think any policy necessarily is going to fix that. And certainly there are some technologies that have been discussed in earlier panels, I believe, about how you make sure that material is actually true material or was real material and so forth, and that can help. But at the end of the day, we all have to be responsible. And I think that's the part of the education is training people on how they themselves can use this technology in a responsible way. And that's, I think, goes beyond what any particular policy can achieve.
Well, we have 2 minutes left, and I want to do a thought experiment. I'm going to go off the little script a little bit here. Imagine that there's AI in jobs is in the news every single day. Imagine someone came up to you after this, I'm not saying do this, and said, I want to be AI ready. I want to make sure, it could be an 18-year-old student, it could be a 64-year-old programmer. What would you tell them? How do I make sure that I am AI ready?
So
go ahead.
I'll go first. I was at a global AI summit in New York City at NASDAQ, and the head of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Kristalina Georgieva, said this final answer to your question. She said, we should train the students of the future or educate the students of the future to work in a world that is increasingly uncertain and has AI, and so that they have the muscle memory to adapt. That would be my answer, is her answer.
A slightly different way of saying that. I think one of the most important skills that people have to have in the age of AI is the ability to learn continuously and to adapt continuously and be flexible. Coursera.org is a great place to start to gain some of those skills. But it really is, I think it actually starts with each individual having that mindset of continuously learning. So.
And to build on that, I think we need to challenge people to just get out there and try AI. I think particularly the older population not in school today, many of them are just afraid. They're afraid maybe they're going to do something wrong, and they just imagine bad things happening. And I think encouraging people to get a tool, try it, think of a task that you might need some help on, and see what tool can help you. And that, again, coming back to the lifelong learning, but the education, the willingness to learn is something that I think we have to encourage in all people in order to continually be ready for AI as it continues to change over the coming years.
Thank you all so much. Would you join me in thanking this group of panelists?